provided link references the International Residential Code 2021, specifically Chapter 31, which addresses existing structures, and within that, Section R3102. While the direct link may not display a specific chart showing the chronology of smoke detector placement in the building code, understanding how to navigate this section of the code is essential. This section focuses on the requirements for smoke alarms in existing buildings. Examining code changes over time involves comparing different editions of the International Residential Code or other applicable building codes to understand the evolution of smoke detector placement requirements. Changes to smoke detector requirements are influenced by several factors, including advancements in technology, fire incident data, and a desire to improve life safety. Code development is an ongoing process with regular updates and revisions. Code changes typically undergo a rigorous review process involving input from various stakeholders like fire officials, building officials, manufacturers, and the public. Firstly, locate the specific section related to smoke detectors in the relevant edition of the building code. Secondly, compare this section with the corresponding section in previous editions of the code. Thirdly, note any changes in the wording, requirements, or exceptions related to smoke detector placement. Code requirements often specify the locations where smoke detectors must be installed. This typically includes inside each sleeping room, outside each separate sleeping area in the immediate vicinity of the bedrooms, and on each additional story of the dwelling, including basements. Codes evolve. For example, there have been changes to requirements around interconnected smoke alarms. Modern building codes often require smoke alarms to be interconnected, so that when one alarm sounds, all alarms in the dwelling sound. This provides earlier warning to occupants, especially if a fire starts in a remote part of the building. Another change is that earlier codes may have permitted battery-powered smoke alarms in some situations. Modern codes increasingly favor hardwired smoke alarms with battery backup to ensure reliable operation. Also, codes evolve from ionization to photoelectric smoke detectors or dual sensor alarms, which may have been introduced or become more prevalent in updated codes. The reason is that different types of smoke detectors respond differently to various types of fires. Photoelectric alarms tend to be more effective at detecting slow smoldering fires, while ionization alarms are generally more responsive to fast flaming fires. Dual sensor alarms combine both technologies for enhanced fire detection. Another element is the increase in specificity of requirements. Earlier codes may have had more general requirements, while later codes often include more detailed specifications regarding the placement, type, and maintenance of smoke detectors. This increased specificity aims to reduce ambiguity and improve compliance. Codes may evolve in response to new technologies such as smart smoke detectors that can communicate with occupants via mobile devices or integrate with home automation systems. The use of interconnected wireless smoke detectors has also become more common. Another thing to consider is that changes to codes often include updates to definitions of terms related to fire safety such as sleeping area, story, and habitable space. These changes can impact how the code requirements are applied in practice. There may also be changes to testing and listing requirements. Building codes often reference standards from organizations like Underwriters Laboratories UL to ensure that smoke detectors meet minimum performance requirements. Changes to these standards can lead to corresponding changes in the building code. Another example is the influence of research and fire incident data. Changes in building codes are often based on research findings and data from actual fire incidents. For example, if data shows that a particular type of fire causes a significant number of injuries or fatalities, the code may be updated to address that specific hazard. Code compliance also evolves. Local jurisdictions may adopt and enforce building codes differently. Some jurisdictions may adopt the latest edition of the code, while others may lag behind or adopt modified versions of the code. Code enforcement is typically the responsibility of local building officials who review building plans, conduct inspections, and issue permits to ensure that buildings are constructed and maintained in accordance with the code. The amendments to the code also evolve as local jurisdictions often have the authority to amend the building code to address specific local conditions or concerns. These amendments can vary widely from one jurisdiction to another. Codes also need to address accessibility. Building codes also include requirements for accessibility to ensure that buildings are usable by people with disabilities. These requirements may include provisions for visual alarms, tactile signage, and accessible routes. There are also regulations around maintenance and testing. Building codes typically include requirements for the maintenance and testing of fire protection systems, including smoke detectors. These requirements may specify how often smoke detectors should be tested, cleaned, and replaced. The requirements will also change on how to handle false alarms. False alarms can be a significant problem, causing unnecessary disruption and potentially reducing the credibility of fire alarms. Building codes may include requirements to minimize false alarms, such as using smoke detectors with advanced alarm verification features. It is also helpful to note the documentation and record-keeping requirements. Building codes may require building owners to maintain records of inspections, testing, and maintenance of fire protection systems. These records can be used to verify compliance with the code and identify potential problems. Another element that is updated is the education and training around the code. Effective code compliance requires that building professionals, including architects, engineers, contractors, and inspectors, have a thorough understanding of the code requirements. Building codes are updated to reflect the latest knowledge and best practices in fire safety, which can be a challenge to stay current. There is also the element of the relation of the IRC with other codes. The International Residential Code IRC is part of a family of codes developed by the International Code Council ICC. Other codes in this family include the International Building Code IBC, the International Fire Code ISC, and the International Plumbing Code IPC. It's important to understand how these codes relate to each other, as some projects may involve multiple codes. The definitions in the code change to clarify meaning. Building codes include definitions of key terms to ensure consistent interpretation and application of the code requirements. These definitions can be critical for understanding the intent of the code. Codes are also updated to better address hazards. Building codes are constantly evolving to address emerging hazards such as new building materials, construction techniques, and environmental conditions. These updates help to ensure that buildings are as safe as possible. There is also the performance-based design versus prescriptive requirements. Building codes typically include both prescriptive requirements, which specify exactly how a building must be constructed, and performance-based requirements, which allow for alternative designs that meet the intent of the code. There are also requirements for existing buildings, such as the International Existing Building Code (EBC) that provides requirements for the alteration, repair, and addition to existing buildings. This code addresses issues such as fire safety, structural integrity, and accessibility. There is also a cost-benefit analysis involved. When updating building codes, code developers consider the costs and benefits of different requirements. The goal is to adopt requirements that provide the greatest level of safety at a reasonable cost. The global implications of codes is something that has changed. Building codes are increasingly being harmonized across different countries and regions. This harmonization helps to facilitate international trade and reduce barriers to construction. Codes also address disaster resilience as building codes are updated to improve the resilience of buildings to natural disasters, such as earthquakes, hurricanes, and floods. These updates may include requirements for stronger building materials, improved structural design, and enhanced flood protection. Building codes are also increasingly addressing sustainability, such as energy efficiency, water conservation, and the use of sustainable building materials. These updates help to reduce the environmental impact of buildings. Codes are addressing the integration of technology. Building codes are evolving to address the integration of new technologies into buildings, such as smart home systems, renewable energy systems, and electric vehicle charging stations. Building codes also address health and well-being, such as requirements for ventilation, lighting, and acoustics to improve the health and well-being of building occupants. Codes also change based on legal and regulatory context because building codes are often part of a complex legal and regulatory framework. It's important to understand the legal context in which the code is being applied. Codes are also updated on how to improve communication and education, such as improving the clarity and usability of building codes. This may include using plain language, providing illustrations, and developing training materials. Building codes are also updated to address accessibility for people with disabilities and may include requirements for accessible entrances, restrooms, and other features. There are also changes to improve the code development process, such as making the code development process more transparent, inclusive, and data-driven. The relationship between building codes and insurance is also important, and insurance companies may offer lower premiums for buildings that are built to higher code standards. There are also changes on how to address aging infrastructure, such as requirements for the inspection, maintenance, and repair of aging buildings and infrastructure. There are changes to address climate change, such as updating building codes to address the impacts of climate change, such as sea level rise, extreme weather events, and changes in temperature. There are also changes to address urbanization, as urbanization can lead to new challenges for building codes, such as increased density, traffic congestion, and environmental pollution. The main way to understand the changes of the building code is to research previous versions of it.